Former astronaut Ellen Ochoa says that although she doesn't have a definite idea of when it might happen, she that humans will someday need to be able to live in other environments than those found on Earth. This conjecture informs her interest in future research missions to the moon. Which choice completes the text with the most logical and precise word or phrase? A. Demands. B. Speculates. C. Doubts. D. Establishes. Beginning in the 1950s, Navajo Nation legislator Annie Dodge Waneka continuously worked to promote public health. This effort involved traveling throughout the vast Navajo homeland and writing a medical dictionary for speakers of Diné Bizad, the Navajo-Hoang language. Which choice completes the text with the most logical and precise word or phrase? A. Impartial. B. Offhand. C. Persistent. D. Mandatory. Following the principles of community-based participatory research, tribal nations and research institutions are equal partners in health studies conducted on reservations. A collaboration between the Crow Tribe and Montana State University. This model, tribal citizens worked alongside scientists to design the methodology and continue to assist in data collection. Which choice completes the text with the most logical and precise word or phrase? A. Circumvents. B. C. Fabricates. D. Exemplifies. The parasitic daughter plant increases its reproductive success by flowering at the same time as the host plant it has latched onto. In 2020, Jianchang Wu and his colleagues determined that the tiny daughter achieves this with its host by absorbing and utilizing a protein the host produces when it is about to flower. Which choice completes the text with the most logical and precise word or phrase? A. Synchronization. B. Hibernation. C. Prediction. D. Moderation. Given that the conditions in binary star systems should make planetary formation nearly impossible, it's not surprising that the existence of planets in such systems has lacked explanation. Roman Rafikov and Kedron Silsby shed light on the subject when they used modeling to determine a complex set of factors that could support planets' development. Which choice completes the text with the most logical and precise word or phrase? A. A discernible. B. A straightforward. C. An inconclusive. D. An unbiased. In 2007, computer scientist Luis von Ahn was working on converting printed books into a digital format. He found that some words were distorted enough that digital scanners couldn't recognize them, but most humans could easily read them. Based on that finding, von Ahn invented a simple security test to keep automated bots out of websites. The first version of the reCAPTCHA test asked users to type one known word and one of the many words scanners couldn't recognize. Correct answers proved the users were humans and added data to the book digitizing project. Which choice best states the main purpose of the text? A. To discuss von Ahn's invention of reCAPTCHA. B. To explain how digital scanners work. C. To call attention to von Ahn's book digitizing project. D. To indicate how popular reCAPTCHA is. The following text is from Edith Wharton's 1905 novel, The House of Mirth. Lily Bart and a companion are walking through a park. Lily had no real intimacy with nature, but she had a passion for the appropriate and could be keenly sensitive to a scene which was the fitting background of her own sensations. The landscape outspread below her seemed an enlargement of her present mood, and she found something of herself in its calmness, its breadth, its long, free reaches. On the nearer slopes, the sugar maples wavered like pyres of light. Lower down was a massing of gray orchards, and here and there the lingering green of an oak grove. Which choice best describes the function of the underlined sentence in the text as a whole? A. It creates a detailed image of the physical setting of the scene. B. It establishes that a character is experiencing an internal conflict. C. It makes an assertion that the next sentence then expands on. D. It illustrates an idea that is introduced in the previous sentence. A study by a team, including finance professor Madhu Veeraraghavan, suggests that exposure to sunshine during the workday can lead to overly optimistic behavior. Using data spanning from 1994 to 2010 for a set of U.S. companies, the team compared over 29,000 annual earnings forecasts to the actual earnings later reported by those companies. The team found that the greater the exposure to sunshine at work in the 2 weeks before a manager submitted an earnings forecast, the more the manager's forecast exceeded what the company actually earned that year. Which choice best states the function of the underlined sentence in the overall structure of the text? A. To summarize the results of the team's analysis. B. To present a specific example that illustrates the study's findings. C. To explain part of the methodology used in the team's study. D. To call out a challenge the team faced in conducting its analysis. The following text is adapted from Edith Nesbit's 1906 novel, The Railway Children. Mother did not spend all her time in paying dull visits to dull ladies and sitting dully at home waiting for dull ladies to pay visits to her. She was almost always there, ready to play with the children and read to them and help them to do their home lessons. Besides this, she used to write stories for them while they were at school and read them aloud after tea, and she always made up funny pieces of poetry for their birthdays and for other great occasions. According to the text, what is true about Mother? A. She wishes that more ladies would visit her. B. Birthdays are her favorite special occasion. C. She creates stories and poems for her children. D. Reading to her children is her favorite activity. The following text is from Maggie Pogue Johnson's 1910 poem, Poet of Our Race. In this poem, the speaker is addressing Paul Laurence Dunbar, a Black author. Thou, with stroke of mighty pen, hast told of joy and mirth, and read the hearts and souls of men as cradled from their birth. The language of the flowers, thou hast read them all, and e'en the little brook responded to thy call. Which choice best states the main purpose of the text? A. To praise a certain writer for being especially perceptive regarding people and nature. B. To establish that a certain writer has read extensively about a variety of topics. C. To call attention to a certain writer's careful and elaborately detailed writing process. D. To recount fond memories of an afternoon spent in nature with a certain writer. Born in 1891 to a Quechua-speaking family in the Andes Mountains of Peru, Martín Chambi is today considered to be one of the most renowned figures of Latin American photography. In a paper for an art history class, a student claims that Chambi's photographs have considerable ethnographic value. In his work, Chambi was able to capture diverse elements of Peruvian society, representing his subjects with both dignity and authenticity. Which finding, if true, would most directly support the student's claim? A. Chambi took many commissioned portraits of wealthy Peruvians, but he also produced hundreds of images carefully documenting the peoples, sites, and customs of indigenous communities of the Andes. B. Chamby's photographs demonstrate a high level of technical skill, as seen in his strategic use of illumination to create dramatic light and shadow contrasts. C. During his lifetime, Chamby was known and celebrated both within and outside his native Peru, as his work was published in places like Argentina, Spain, and Mexico. D. Some of the peoples and places Chamby photographed had long been popular subjects for Peruvian photographers. Some researchers studying indigenous actors and filmmakers in the United States have turned their attention to the early days of cinema, particularly the 1910s and 1920s, when people like James Young, Deer, Dark Cloud, Edwin Carew, and Lillian St. Cyr, known professionally as Red Wing, were involved in one way or another with numerous films. In fact, so many films and associated records for this era have been lost that counts of those four figures output should be taken as bare minimums rather than totals. It's entirely possible, for example, that which choice most effectively uses data from the table to complete the example. A. Dark Cloud acted in significantly fewer films than did Lillian St. Cyr, who is credited with 66 performances. B. Edwin Carew's 47 credited acting roles includes only films made after 1934. C. Lillian St. Cyr acted in far more than 66 films, and Edwin Carew directed more than 58. D. James Young Deer actually directed 33 films and acted in only 10. Alicia Montesinos Navarro, Isabel Storer, and Rocio Perez Barrales recently examined several plots within a diverse plant community in southeast Spain. The researchers calculated that if individual plants were randomly distributed on this particular landscape, only about 15% would be with other plants in patches of vegetation. They counted the number of juvenile plants of 5 species growing in patches of vegetation and the number growing alone on bare ground, and compared those numbers to what would be expected if the plants were randomly distributed. Based on these results, they claim that plants of these species that grow in close proximity to other plants gain an advantage at an early developmental stage. Which choice best describes data from the table that support the researchers' claim? A. For all 5 species, less than 75% of juvenile plants were growing in patches of vegetation. B. The species with the greatest number of juvenile plants growing in patches of vegetation was H. stochas. C. For T. libanitis and T. moritori, the percentage of juvenile plants growing in patches of vegetation was less than what would be expected if plants were randomly distributed. D. For each species, the percentage of juvenile plants growing in patches of vegetation was substantially higher than what would be expected if plants were randomly distributed. In the mountains of Brazil, Barbacenia tomentosa and Barbacenia macrantha, 2 plants in the Velociaceae family, established themselves on soilless, nutrient-poor patches of quartzite rock. Plant ecologists Ana Abraão and Patricia de Brito Costa used microscopic analysis to determine that the roots of B. tomentosa and B. macrantha, which grow directly into the quartzite, have clusters of fine hairs near the root tip. Further analysis indicated that these hairs secrete both malic and citric acids. The researchers hypothesized that the plants depend on dissolving underlying rock with these acids, as the process not only creates channels for continued growth, but also releases phosphates that provide the vital nutrient phosphorus. Which finding, if true, would most directly support the researchers' hypothesis? A. Other species in the Velociaceae family are found in terrains with more soil, but have root structures similar to those of B. tomentosa and B. macrantha. B. Though B. tomentosa and B. macrantha both secrete citric and malic acids, each species produces the acids in different proportions. C. The roots of B. tomentosa and B. macrantha carve new entry points into rocks even when cracks in the surface are readily available. D. B. tomentosa and B. macrantha thrive even when transferred to the surfaces of rocks that do not contain phosphates. Herbivorous sauropod dinosaurs could grow more than 100 feet long and weigh up to 80 tons, and some researchers have attributed the evolution of sauropods to such massive sizes to increased plant production resulting from high levels of atmospheric carbon dioxide during the Mesozoic era. However, there is no evidence of significant spikes in carbon dioxide levels coinciding with relevant periods in sauropod evolution, such as when the first large sauropods appeared, when several sauropod lineages underwent further evolution toward gigantism, or when sauropods reached their maximum known sizes, suggesting that which choice most logically completes the text? A. Fluctuations in atmospheric carbon dioxide affected different sauropod lineages differently. B. The evolution of larger body sizes in sauropods did not depend on increased atmospheric carbon dioxide. C. Atmospheric carbon dioxide was higher when the largest known sauropods lived than it was when the first sauropods appeared. D. Sauropods probably would not have evolved to such immense sizes if atmospheric carbon dioxide had been even slightly higher. In documents called judicial opinions, judges explain the reasoning behind their legal rulings, and in those explanations, they sometimes cite and discuss historical and contemporary philosophers. Legal scholar and philosopher Anita L. Allen argues that while judges are naturally inclined to mention philosophers whose views align with their own positions, the strongest judicial opinions consider and rebut potential objections. Discussing philosophers whose views conflict with judges' views could therefore go forward. Which choice most logically completes the text? A. Allow judges to craft judicial opinions without needing to consult philosophical works. B. Help judges improve the arguments they put forward in their judicial opinions. C. Make judicial opinions more comprehensible to readers without legal or philosophical training. D. Bring judicial opinions in line with views that are broadly held among philosophers. Public awareness campaigns about the need to reduce single-use plastics can be successful, says researcher Kim Borg of Monash University in Australia, when these campaigns give consumers a choice. For example, Japan achieved a 40% reduction in plastic bag use after cashiers were instructed to ask customers whether wanted a bag. Which choice completes the text so that it conforms to the conventions of standard English? A, they, B, 1C, you, it. In ancient Greece, an Epicurean was a follower of Epicurus, a philosopher whose beliefs revolved around the pursuit of pleasure. Epicurus defined pleasure as the absence of pain in the body and of trouble in the that all life's virtues derived from this absence. Which choice completes the text so that it conforms to the conventions of standard English? A. Soul, positing B. Soul, positing C. Soul, positing D. Soul. Positing. British scientists James Watson and Francis Crick won the Nobel Prize in part for their 1953 paper announcing the double helix structure of DNA. But it is misleading to say that Watson and Crick discovered the double helix. Findings were based on a famous X-ray image of DNA fibers, Photo 51, developed by X-ray crystallographer Rosalind Franklin and her graduate student Raymond Gosling. Which choice completes the text so that it conforms to the conventions of standard English? A. There. B. It's. C. There. D. It's. In 1937, Chinese-American screen actor Anna May Wong, who had portrayed numerous villains and secondary characters but never a heroine, finally got a starring role in Paramount Pictures' Daughter of Shanghai, a film that expanded the range of possibilities for Asian images on screen. Which choice completes the text so that it conforms to the conventions of standard English? A. Critic Stina Chine claims B. Critic Stina Chine claims C. Critic Stina Chine claims D. Critic Stina Chin claims. In 1637, the price of tulips skyrocketed in Amsterdam, with single bulbs of rare varieties selling for up to the equivalent of $200,000 in today's US dollars. Some historians that this tulip mania was the first historical instance of an asset bubble, which occurs when investors drive prices to highs not supported by actual demand. Which choice completes the text so that it conforms to the conventions of standard English? A. Claiming B, claim C, having claimed D to claim. Researchers studying magnetosensation have determined why some soil-dwelling roundworms in the southern hemisphere move in the opposite direction of Earth's magnetic field when searching for in the northern hemisphere. The magnetic field points down into the ground, but in the southern hemisphere, it points up toward the surface and away from worms' food sources. Which choice completes the text so that it A. Food, B. Food, C. Food, while D. Food? Scientists believe that, unlike most other species of barnacle, turtle barnacles, Chelenibia testudinari, can dissolve the cement-like secretions they use to attach to a sea turtle shell, enabling the barnacles to move short distances across the shell's surface. Which choice completes the text so that it conforms to the conventions of standard English? A. It, B. Themselves, C. Them, D. Itself. The classic children's board game Chutes and Ladders is a version of an ancient Nepalese game, Paramapada Sopanapata. In both games, players encounter good or bad spaces while traveling along a path. Landing on one of the good spaces, a player to skip ahead and arrive closer to the end goal. Which choice completes the text so that it conforms to the conventions of standard English? A allows B, are allowing. C have allowed, D allow. In 1943, in the midst of World War II, mathematics professor Grace Hopper was recruited by the U.S. military to help the war effort by solving complex equations. Hopper's subsequent career would involve more than just as a pioneering computer programmer. Hopper would help usher in the digital age. Which choice completes the text so that it conforms to the conventions of standard English? A. Equations, though. B. Equations, though. C. Equations. Though D. Equations, though. In 1453, English King Henry VI became unfit to rule after falling gravely ill. As a result, Parliament appointed Richard, 3rd Duke of York, who had a strong claim to the English throne, to rule as Lord Protector. Upon recovering 2 years later, forcing an angered Richard from the royal court and precipitating a series of battles later known as the Wars of the Roses. Which choice completes the text so that it conforms to the conventions of standard English? A. Henry resumed his reign. B. The reign of Henry resumed. C. Henry's reign resumed. D. It was Henry who resumed his reign. Although novels and poems are considered distinct literary forms, many authors have created hybrid works that incorporate elements of both. Bernardine Evaristo's The Emperor's Babe is a verse novel, a book-length narrative complete with characters and a plot but conveyed in short, crisp lines of poetry rather than prose. Which choice completes the text with the most logical transition? A, by contrast, B, consequently, C, secondly, D, for example. At 2 weeks old, the time their critical socialization period begins, wolves can smell but cannot yet see or hear. Domesticated dogs can see, hear, and smell by the end of 2 weeks. This relative lack of sensory input may help explain why wolves behave so differently around humans than dogs do. From a very young age, wolves are more wary and less exploratory. Which choice completes the text with the most logical transition? A, in other words, B, for instance. C, by contrast, D accordingly.